Welcome back to VBuzz, everybody. You're here with me, Daryl Baptist, and my awesome co-host for the day, Sharita. Now, earlier, Sharita, we were talking about your accident, and I too have had my share of experiences with accidents as well, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us at home can relate to it too, because it's no surprise and it's not something new to hear about accidents on our streets in Malaysia. And ever since I can remember, there have been public service announcements and advertisements on the TV and radio encouraging drivers to be mindful and cautious on the roads. However, statistics show that Malaysia still has an average of more than 6,800 deaths caused by accidents from an average of 455,000 accidents each year. That is insane. Our government is doing all they can by enforcing the penalization of violations on the road, but maybe it's time we play a role in our own road safety. The folks behind DraVA Driving Coach app are determined to help us become safer drivers, and we sit down with its founders today, Koh Mui Han and Shanmuga Pillaiyan, to find out a little bit more.
Welcome to VBuzz.
Hi, thanks.
Great to have the both of you. Now, the figures that Daryl just mentioned, you know, those are some pretty frightening numbers, which is kind of crazy to me that we have that right now. But you know, to solve a problem, we often look at its root cause. What do you, the both of you, think is the reason for these poor driving standards? Maybe we'll start with you, Mui Han.
Yeah. So I think primarily as Malaysians, we all recognize that we have a serious road accident problem. And I mean, we are averaging about 400 to 500,000 accidents every year, 6,000 to 7,000 deaths per se. But the funny thing is when you go out the street, in fact, DraVA, when we first started, we did this, what we call Ask Our Target Market audience, the poll. 89% came back to say they are actually safe drivers. So on one hand, everybody recognizes we got a road accident problem, but on the other hand, they always say that I'm safe driver. It's somebody else that is causing the problem. So this one actually tinkered us to think that actually is, from our management consulting background, we always think that when you don't have any data to show or you don't have that awareness. So while Malaysians recognize that we have road accident problem, but we always blame another person without thinking that we could be the problem.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with this. You know, every time you get into an accident, you're always like, no, it wasn't me. But you don't really think, right? You don't assess the situation. But, you know, how do you plan to tackle this issue with the DraVA app, Shanmuga?
Yeah, so I think the first step of changing behavior or changing the, how we drive is to have awareness. So like Mui Han mentioned, so the first step is if someone starts to use the app, they will realize, okay, at what point am I violating? Am I speeding? Am I hard braking? Am I hard accelerating? Am I driving aggressively? So the first step, of course, of any change is you need to have the awareness where you realize that, okay, I may have a problem. Okay, these are where that I need to improve, and then slowly they will take steps to improve. So what we are doing now is part of our initiative as well. We are working with Safety Driving School. SDC in Petaling Jaya, so they are one of the largest driving schools in Malaysia. So we are making this app available to their students as well, so they can use this when they are learning to drive as well as after they leave the school. So this again our main philosophy behind this is that you can't change behavior, or it's more difficult to change behavior for adults which have been driving for maybe 10 or 20 years. But if you catch the new drivers when they are still learning, then it's easier to inculcate that new habits.
I think that could be a very effective method. But, you know, it's a very cool concept that you've come up with. You know, establishing the root cause, which is of course, you know, people not taking accountability for their own, you know, driving habits. But what really inspired this idea? Could you tell us about that?
So actually, this all happened last year, about May time. So as you were saying earlier, that both of us actually are schoolmates. And about this time, about last year, about May time, we actually had a school friend who was involved in a road accident on the North-South Highway in Malacca.
So sorry to hear about that.
So on that fateful day, not only he died, his brother died on the spot in that sense. So that gave us the epiphany to think of actually, you know, that we can lose a friend in a road accident, which is a very common thing. And we wanted really to do something about it. And that's how we actually got ourselves hooked up first with MAGIC, the Malaysian Innovation and Creativity Center, as well as MDEX subsequently, to actually come up something that we can think that can help Malaysians in road safety.
Right. Could you explain to us then a bit more about the concept of the app then, of DraVA?
So actually how we have designed the app will run on the background on your phone. I mean, it's not something like Waze where you need to interact with it.
Right.
The whole idea is it won't be distracting when it's running on your app. It will run on the background.
Okay.
It will start and stop automatically. So when you start your journey, it will trigger and on and record the trip.
Right.
Right. So as you drive, it will record key parameters such as the speed you drive, whether you're speeding relative to the actual speed limit of the road, and also about how the style you drive, things like hard braking, hard acceleration, whether you're hard swerving, and so forth. So these are key parameters that show whether you're driving aggressively or are you trying to be a safe driver. Yeah. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we have tracking these records and they are saved as a trip history.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the actual events consolidation of your violations or your behavior, we consolidate into what we call a safety index. So on a monthly basis, we have a safety index that shows how safe you're driving.
Wow,
Okay.
that's very comprehensive. And you know, one thing that I notice when I have visitors who come overseas and visit me, and they comment on the drivers on our road, and they're like, wow, this is crazy the way that some people drive here in Malaysia, you know, not observing the rules, making U-turns at random places, you know, going past traffic lights. Why then do you think it's so important for drivers to be aware of their traffic offenses?
I think primary is not only just traffic offences per se, but we are trying to change a behaviour or a problem that is, I mean, year on year, like, I mean, earlier, like you said, I think government have tried, you know, the stick approach per se. So we are thinking very hard whether this approach, does it work, or people don't even care about fines that they get and things like that, and that doesn't change your behaviour. So to do something about it, we rather thought that we needed a solution first to create awareness. Then how can we incentivize this change of behaviour consistently? That's where DraVA has been positioned as some solution provider that's going to work with insurance company, hoping that we can lower the insurance premiums for safer drivers. Because at the end of the day, insurance companies are also looking for safer drivers, so they have a better portfolio. At the moment, the motor insurance industry in Malaysia is suffering from high, what we call loss ratio claims. So our claims are one of the highest in year-on-year basis. So if they can find safer drivers to become their customers, definitely profitability will also improve for them.
That's right.
That's a win-win.
But you know, you're collecting a lot of information on people's driving habits, and this information is very sensitive, I would say. If, you know, falls to the wrong hands, it could be used for a different cause altogether. Now, how do you sort of ensure that this information is protected?
I think primarily we abide by the PDPA rule, the
Malaysia has Personal Data Protection Act.
Right? Yeah. And our promise to our customer is actually we only working with the customers to share back the data to them. Nobody else see their data unless they give consensus to it. So even with the insurance company, we are not working with the insurance company to show the data of our clients.
Right.
But if any of our clients would like to show their data to get a better premium rates, then we facilitate the process per se.
Okay, so if your clients are happy with releasing this information,
so in fact, under the PTPA, we are also not obliged to actually share with the authorities. So there was also a concern whether the PDRM or even the government would knock on our door and extract all the information of who are the bad drivers out there. So under the current act, it actually doesn't allow us to do so. So if, let's say, there is a time where the government wants to do this, then they will have to go through a parliamentary process to pass an amendment to the act. So by that time itself, I think that will only cater for the new people, I mean, coming on board. So as far as data protection is rather safe per se.
Well, that's good to hear. But you know, a little bit earlier you were mentioning how you're working together with insurance companies, which kind of intrigued me because before I found my way to VBuzz, I worked briefly at an insurance law firm in Singapore as a legal assistant, specifically for road accidents. So it's very interesting to me that, you know, you're going to use this technology to kind of assist in these cases. How do you intend to prove to insurance companies that a user is a safe driver?
So that's an interesting point. I think the development in Malaysia, we got to recognize that actually Bank Negara have actually announced the de-tarification for general insurance, which include motor insurance per se. And this de-tarification actually start 1st of July this year. And we are going through a phased de-tarification. So we expect full de-tarification by year 2020. So under this environment, insurance companies are actually allowed to offer competitive or variable pricing for different groups of people. And that's where our technology, telematics, or the science of telematics works very well, because at the moment, the insurance company only got past data. So if you met an accident, then you make a claim, then they know that you have an accident before. But on your day-to-day driving, they actually have no data at all per se.
Okay.
Sorry. Could you explain to us a little bit more about the telematics and what that really is? Because I'm not familiar with that concept. Yeah.
Maybe Shan.
Okay, sure. So I mentioned earlier that we are tracking data such as your speed, heart acceleration, heart braking. So that is what is a general term, what we call telematics. Is basically any characteristic or features of the car or your driving that we are recording. So that is generally known as telematics.
Right. Okay.
So I think continuing from what Mui Han said, so what we are trying to help is facilitate again is the fact that currently insurance companies cannot differentiate between bad luck and bad behavior. In essence, when we purchase an insurance, what we are insuring against is bad luck. Right? For some unforeseen reason, not intentionally, we meet an accident, and for that we should be compensated. As opposed to if we are a so-called consistently bad driver or a serial driver, then of course that is what the insurance doesn't want to cover you, or feels that they are so-called disadvantaged, right?
That's pretty cool that you're working together with insurance companies, but of course they do abide by some very stringent rules.
Yes,
what are some of the challenges that you've faced in dealing with insurance companies?
So as you have alluded to, I mean, insurance companies are very traditional and very conservative. So we have had multiple negotiations or discussions with the insurance company. So of course they are also apprehensive to adopt new technology and new approaches. But again, I mean, this approach has been adopted in more mature countries such as United Kingdom or US as well. So in Malaysia, AXA also has launched such a product recently as well. So I think the most tricky area is that the lack of specific data in Malaysian market or Malaysian drivers. Again, this is in a way is a chicken and egg scenario where you'll have to at least launch a product or run a pilot to collect such data, and only then you can assess or evaluate that data. I mean, without making that first step, you will never have the data, right?
Yeah, you know, it's funny that you said that this system has been implemented overseas already, and I'm sure in your research you would have seen that maybe the system works in those countries. But you know, in Malaysia, we've been facing the issue of road safety for the longest time I can remember. So why do you think implementing a system like DraVA now is going to yield us results?
So I think primarily the big push, at least for the insurance industry, is a de-tariffication process by Bank Negara. So before this, actually there was no push to actually introduce this, because when it's a tariff product, as long as you drive a certain car, you're a certain profile, then your premiums are the same, whichever provider you go. But with this de-tarification exercise, actually now it can be very significantly different. And if a driver can actually prove a profile that is very different from another driver, that's where the play of risk assessments become very different, and the premiums become different. So we clearly see that why this only can work in this environment is because of this incentive that going to be pushed by premiums. And basically all of us need to buy car insurance or motor insurance, and that's a given and mandatory in Malaysia per se. And without this incentive, there's actually like you rightly say, very hard for any mindset to change per se, or behaviors to change.
Very true, but you know, given that this incentive now does exist, what other kind of methods would you use to encourage or convince drivers to be more aware of their road safety and try to understand their own driving behavior? How would you do that aside from the incentives?
Yeah. So I think, like Shan rightly said, why we call our app is actually why we call DraVA Driving Coach. It's actually supposed to be a coach per se. And one of the initiatives that actually we launched with Safety Driving Center, the Driving Institute in PJ, was actually to have this function called mentor-mentee.
Right.
So one of the areas that we're targeting at is all the teen drivers, because in the first 2 years of driving, especially when you're under probationary, you're always unsure. And we also feel that parents having teenagers, they are actually very afraid. So the app currently allows the driver to appoint their parents as mentors. And the benefit of the mentors is they actually get access to the data, the driving data of the mentees per se. So for instance, if let's say I have a teenage kid that is driving out there and he is doing certain things on the road, I actually get the information if I'm his mentor in that sense.
So you would also get alerts if your teenage son or daughter is speeding or created a violation, then you will get an alert.
So what we're trying to do here is, I think coming back from earlier point is, we understand this is going to be a very difficult challenge to change behavior. Malaysians' behavior is very hard to change. But we want to start it where it matters most and at the young drivers.
Yeah, you know, I was going to say, I too was a student from this driving school in PJ that you speak of, and the accident that I got into was when I was a teen, and it was because I was unsure and I was a little petrified of being on the road at such an early stage. And I think if I had this app, maybe it would have made a bit of a difference for me. You know, I would have gotten a bit more advice and it would have helped me out. But I'm glad that you guys have taken the initiative to start now. It's now better than never, right? And thank you so much for being on the show today and telling us all that you're doing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know what? I agree as well. If this was something that existed when I was learning as well, I maybe wouldn't have gotten into a few minor scratches there.
Exactly.
But I love that, you know, they saw a problem and they sought to fix it from the root cause itself. It's fantastic.
Again, better we start now than never, right?
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break right now, but when we come back, we're going to be speaking with Chong Yi Lin from Cotton Mermaids, so stay tuned.